Hi, welcome to Pao Clinic. Today we'll talk about the principles of Yin Yoga. As you know, Yin Yoga is a wonderful practice that we advocate for a lot because it's the one practice that is calming and restorative for the mind, but very effective to target the connective tissues of the body. Those connective tissues being collectively the fascia, and if we break them down, it's the tendons, the ligaments, and the joint capsules. It's all these tissues that we only really pay attention to when they've reached their breaking point. Think elbow tendonitis, think plantar fasciitis, think any condition where there's been irritation or inflammation. Think, for example, the IT band. We always want to hammer the IT band when it's really the opposing muscle groups that are in a fight, and so the IT band pays the price. So anyway, with a consistent Yin Yoga practice, these tissues can have a much more harmonious space in your body. In order to practice Yin Yoga safely at home, however, we need to establish 4 principles. The first one being playing your edge. When you first go into a Yin Yoga pose, you need to do so slowly, and you need to take your time to find that first edge, that first sensation of stretch or compression, a little bit of tension, some comfortable discomfort, if you will. On a scale of 1 to 10, these sensations should lie about a 2, a 3, or a 4. 5 is kind of edging it. 10 is absolute pain. 0 is no sensation at all. So you kind of want to be in the middle. And depending on the pose, that scale will vary a little bit. After you've been in the pose for a minute or two or a couple of seconds, you might feel that that initial sensation has somewhat dissipated. So this is when you get to play your edge by maybe folding a little bit deeper, removing a prop, twisting a little bit more. This is how you advance your practice. So you don't necessarily have to change the pose altogether. You simply readjust a little bit in order to find that initial sensation again. This is how you work through the layers of fascia. So that's principle number 1. Principle number 2 is to relax the muscles around the joints. Say if you're trying to target the knees in a child's pose, for example, you need to make sure that the quadriceps and the hamstrings are relaxed so that the connective tissues that cross the knee can get the benefit of the pose. Principle number 3 is to remain relatively still in the pose. As I said in principle number 1, you need to go into the pose slowly, and you also need to take your time to find that comfortable discomfort in the pose. So you will need to shift around a little bit, and of course, once you get to that point where you get to play your edge, you will need to move. But we want to limit the amount of fidgeting and unnecessary movement in the pose so that the connective tissues get the benefit of the pose. Remember, in Yin Yoga, we go for longer duration with lesser intensity. That's how the connective tissues respond. That's how the connective tissues get the benefit of the stretch or of the pose. This is also why we need to use props when necessary. If a pose is too intense to begin with, maybe a bolster or a block might narrow the gap between, say, our forehead and the floor or the torso on the floor. And this can make the pose a little bit more comfortable to begin with. And as you practice, you might be able to remove these props and go a little bit deeper. So remaining relatively still while you hold the pose and only moving when it's necessary, so when you're ready to play your edge, is how we advance Yin Yoga pose. And principle number 4 is to come out of the pose very slowly and to rest before going on to the next pose. So after you've been in a Yin Yoga pose for 3 or 5 minutes, your body might feel temporarily weakened. So you've been in this pose for a long time, you've taken all that stress off of that fascial train or that particular area of connective tissue. You need to come out of that pose so slowly so as to not load all that connective tissue with the stress of coming out of the pose. So use your hands, use your props, come out slowly, use your breath to guide you through the movement. And before you go on to the next pose, rest for a second or two in a neutral pose. Maybe you just come to sitting and you rest for a while. Maybe you take Shavasana and rest there for just 30 seconds or so before moving on to the next pose, because this rest period is what allows your body to absorb the benefit of the pose. So all in all, these are the 4 principles of Yin Yoga. Remember, fascia is what envelops our body. Fascia is what shapes us. Fascia shapes itself into the shapes or the positions that we hold usually or on an everyday basis. So if you tend to sit in front of a computer or you drive a lot, chances are the front of your body is going to be very tight. So that pectoral fascia is going to be tight. The suboccipital triangle is also going to be very tight and short. So you're going to be here. So take your time going through Yin Yoga. You won't automatically open up and regain your posture or all this range of motion that you've been hoping for. It will take a little bit of time, but it's better to do it safely than to aim for a very high intensity or very long hold times and risk injuring yourself. So thank you for joining us today. I hope this helps. Now go check out some of our Yin Yoga tutorials.